The night the river swallowed our little town, my father pushed me into the rushing water while shouting, "Your sister needs me more." For 3 decades, folks celebrated him as a hero, while I lived haunted, trying to piece together the memory of the man who nearly ended my life. Hello, my dear friends, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening where you are. I want you to feel the warm hug of this grandma. My name is Olivia Wright, 73 years old, born in Riverview along the Ohio River Valley. These days I've made my home in Pine Ridge, North Dakota, where after a lifetime of storms I finally found peace. Now my mornings are quiet, spent sewing cloth dolls for children who don't have much. But these aren't ordinary dolls. Every single one carries a piece of my history. One is stitched from the dress I wore the day I reunited with my sister. Another carries fabric from the first clothes I was given after the flood. And there's even one made with scraps from what little was left of my childhood home. I embroider a small red heart on each chest. My reminder that no matter how heavy life feels, the heart always keeps beating. I began this craft about 15 years ago when I realized I had to turn my pain into something meaningful. At first, my dolls were lopsided, clumsy things. But I practiced, learned new stitches, and soon, neighborhood kids started calling them rescue dolls. They swore the dolls kept the nightmares away. I don't know if that's true, but I do know they pushed mine aside. Right now, I'm sitting in my sewing room, surrounded by baskets of colorful fabric scraps, with my mother-in-law's old sewing machine in front of me. Outside the wide window, the sun sets in shades of orange and purple, swallows darting home to their nests. It's not fancy, but for someone who once lost everything, every scrap of fabric feels priceless. Before I go on, I'd like to ask for a little kindness. If my story touches your heart, please give this video a like and subscribe. It helps this grandma reach someone else who might need these words. And in the comments, tell me where you're watching from, what part of the country, and what time of day. Is it with your morning coffee, after lunch, or in the stillness of night? I read every comment, and knowing where your kindness comes from always brings tears to my eyes. Together, we can weave a chain of hope. Today, I want to share a story I've carried in silence for many years. It's about how water can wash away not only houses but pieces of who we are, and how, sometimes, the current itself teaches us just how strong we really are. I was born in 1952, in a small wooden house in Riverview, Ohio River Valley. Back then, the river was our gentle neighbor, winding quietly about 600 feet from our back porch. Daddy, Arnold Wright, worked in the sawmill, always coming home with the scent of fresh-cut timber clinging to his clothes. Tall, serious, with piercing ice-blue eyes, he carried himself like a man who saw things no one else did. He was proud of his German roots, though his mama was as American as apple pie. Mama Dorothy Wright was his opposite. Small, quick to laugh, always talking. She stitched clothes for neighbors, and everybody in town could spot her delicate embroidery. She was the one who taught me to sew. I still remember her guiding my little hands around the embroidery hoop, saying, "Olivia, every stitch is like a day in your life. Work carefully, and in the end you'll see a beautiful design." Our home was simple but warm. 3 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen that faced the river slope. The walls creaked on cold winter nights, as though the house itself was talking to us. Mama scrubbed and waxed the pine floors until they gleamed, and the wood stove glowed with fire all winter. Evenings, we gathered around it after supper, the heart of our family. There were 3 of us kids. My brother George was 2 years older, strong, dependable, and Daddy's pride. He could name every type of wood by smell, destined to take over at the mill one day. Then came Linda, for years younger than me. Fragile as crystal, sick with every breeze, constantly needing Mama's care. The town doctor, Dr. Thompson, was practically family. Neighbors whispered she wouldn't survive childhood, but Mama refused to believe it. And then there was me, the middle one. Not strong like George, not delicate like Linda. I was the child Daddy barely noticed, the one Mama leaned on when Linda's fevers kept her busy. I spent hours alone, building dollhouses from old crates under the oak tree, or whispering secrets to the cloth dolls Mama stitched. Quiet at school but sharp. Mrs. Wilson, my teacher, said I had a gift for numbers, though Daddy thought schooling beyond the basics was wasted on a girl. Life moved in a steady rhythm. Up before sunrise, Mama already at the stove, Daddy off to the mill. I dressed Linda, swept the kitchen, then walked to school with George, splashing through puddles. We came home to hot lunch. Then I helped Mama sew or mind Linda while she worked with clients. Playtime was hopscotch, jump rope, hide and seek with the neighbor kids. Sundays meant church in our best clothes, followed by chicken soup or barbecue if there was something to celebrate. Sometimes, Daddy took us fishing on the riverbank. Those were the rare times I saw him laugh. Riverview in the 1950s was a small town where everybody knew your name. Cobblestone streets, colorful clapboard houses, a central square with a bandstand where music played on Sundays. Life revolved around timber, farming, and leather work. Gossip traveled faster than the river. And that river, it had two faces. Most of the year it was our playmate. We swam, fished, and splashed in its cool waters. But after heavy rains, it turned into something else entirely. Mama would stand by the window, worry etched on her face, muttering, "The river's restless today." That was our signal. Pack the important things in plastic. Sleep in our clothes. Stay ready. I was 11 the first time I saw real fear in Daddy's eyes. The rain pelted down like needles, the river rising faster than ever before. He stood on the porch, George at his side, Linda clutched in Mama's arms, me watching from the doorframe. "If the water comes, we take only the essentials," he said flatly. That night the water spared us, but something shifted in him. Soon after, Daddy built a hidden attic above the house. For the hard days, he explained. We didn't yet know how right he was. That flood was only a warning. By the time I turned 13, Mama gave me my most precious gift, a music box with a tiny ballerina twirling to Fur Elise. Around then, Daddy grew more restless. His eyes drifted past us at meals, haunted. Sometimes I woke to the sound of him hammering in that attic, preparing for disasters no one else could see. I'll never forget overhearing him talking with Mr. Benjamin, Irene's father, one late afternoon. "Arnold, the river will take its due one day. You live too close. Think about moving." Daddy snapped back. "And go where? With what money? The sawmill's here. And Linda, you know her health. Moving her could kill her." Mr. Benjamin's reply was grim. "If the big flood comes, Arnold, it'll kill all of you." Those words haunted me. I began watching the river differently, counting the steps between its edge and our porch. And worse, I noticed the way Daddy's gaze lingered on each of us, as if he were making silent calculations I didn't understand. Then came the winter of 1967. I was 15, George 17, Linda 11. The rain started in May and didn't stop. By June, water swallowed the lower town. Families near the banks were warned. Our house had always been spared. But this time, the river had a fury we'd never seen. One Friday night, as we sat in tense silence at the dinner table, pounding shook the door. Lieutenant Custodian from Civil Defense stood there, drenched to the bone. "Arnold, you have to get out now. The river will breach within hours. Your home is in its path." Daddy's face drained of color. "How long?" he asked. "An hour at most. Take only what matters." A truck's on its way. Chaos followed. Mama gathered clothes, Linda's medicines, and our papers. Daddy and George lifted furniture into the attic. I stuffed my music box, dolls, and school books into a bag. That's when I heard the first groan. The foundations shuddered. Water seeped fast, then surged. Mama screamed for Daddy, who ran in with water up to his knees. "The truck won't make it. The bridge is gone. We've got to the roof now." Terror like ice shot through me. George dragged the ladder into place. Daddy hoisted Linda, pale and shaking, into Mama's arms. "You first, Dorothy," he ordered. She climbed Linda close to her chest. "Now, George," he said. But George looked straight at him and shook his head. "Olivia first." For the first time in my life, Daddy truly saw me. His eyes locked on mine, hard and unreadable. "Go, girl," he said. I had barely placed a foot on the ladder when the back wall caved in. A wave of icy water roared through the house, tossing furniture like toys. It slammed me into the wall. "Daddy!" I screamed, water rising to my chest. George fought the current, reached me, shoved me toward the ladder. "Climb!" he yelled. Mama's arms pulled me into the attic. George followed, then Daddy, slamming the trapdoor as water churned below. "It's rising fast," he gasped. He smashed tiles from the attic roof, pushing us one by one through the hole. And then we were on the roof. Rain pounding, wind howling, the whole town below us drowned. We clung to the slippery tiles while screams echoed in the distance. Mama wrapped Linda in a soaked blanket. George's arm was tight around me. Daddy stood apart, scanning the horizon. That's when we saw it. A flicker of light fighting through the storm. A small boat pushing against the current. Lieutenant Custodian and another man were inside. How many of you? He shouted across the roaring water. 5, my father finally answered. My wife, 3 children, and myself. The lieutenant exchanged a heavy glance with the other man in the boat. This boat can't carry all of you. We can only take 1 more adult or 2 smaller children. The river's too strong. We'll have to take the weakest first and then circle back. The silence that fell was heavier than the storm itself. I looked at that tiny boat, already weighed down by 2 men and their equipment, and knew the lieutenant was right. Water was already licking at the roof beneath us. My youngest daughter goes first, Daddy said firmly. She's ill. She won't survive long in this cold. The lieutenant nodded, maneuvering the boat as close as possible. Pass her down, he called, stretching out his arms. Mama kissed Linda's forehead, her tears mingling with rain as she whispered, Be strong, my little love. She turned to Daddy, who cradled Linda with one arm and grabbed my wrist with the other. Wait, he barked. Take both of them, my wife and my daughter. The lieutenant shook his head. Can't risk it. I told you it's too dangerous. Daddy's eyes flickered from Mama to me, then to George. Something unspoken passed between father and son, a silent agreement that made the hair on the back of my neck rise. At last he growled, Take the youngest. We'll be here when you come back. Linda was lowered into the lieutenant's arms, her body limp and shivering. She looked like a little rag doll, terrified, her eyes huge and pleading. We'll be back as soon as we can, the lieutenant promised, pushing the boat away from the collapsing house. Daddy, Linda screamed, reaching out for us. It's all right, baby, Mama cried, her voice straining against the storm. We'll be with you soon. We watched until the flicker of their lantern vanished into the dark. Then Mama turned sharply to Daddy. Why didn't you send Olivia too? She demanded. They could have fit. He didn't answer. He just stared into the water as it rose higher and higher. His silence chilled me worse than the icy rain. Arnold. Mama pressed, her voice cracking. Answer me. Finally, he looked up at her, and the truth hit me like a punch in the chest. It wasn't about space. It was about choice. He had decided who deserved saving first. If that boat doesn't make it back, he began, but the rest of his words were drowned by a thunderous crack. The house next door collapsed into the flood, swallowed whole. Our own roof groaned under the weight of the torrent, part of it caving in, forcing us to huddle together on what little remained. We'll have to swim, George shouted over the roar. The house won't hold. Swim where? Daddy yelled back. The current will drag us under. Better than going down with the house. George shot back. Before either of them could argue more, another light appeared through the sheets of rain. This boat was larger, sturdier, with 3 men from civil defense inside. Over here, one called. Hurry. This whole area's about to go under. Dorothy, you first, Daddy ordered, steadying Mama as she lowered herself. She hesitated, reaching out to me. Come, Olivia, she urged, her hand stretched toward mine. I started forward, but Daddy's hand clamped down on my arm. George next, he barked. He's strong, he can help haul the rest in. George looked torn, his eyes flicking between me and Daddy. I forced a shaky smile. Go on, George. I'll be right behind you. He obeyed, climbing down quickly and reaching his arms up toward me. I edged forward, ready to follow, when the roof beneath me gave way with a deafening crack. I slipped, screaming as the flood dragged me down, but Daddy's arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me back onto the roof. Quickly, one of the men in the boat yelled. We don't have much time. But instead of guiding me down to safety, Daddy's grip tightened. He yanked me away from the edge. What are you doing? Mama shrieked, horrified. He didn't answer. His face twisted with something I couldn't name. Panic, maybe, or determination. The house is going any second, the men shouted. We leave now or no one makes it. Daddy turned his eyes on me, and in them I saw a terrible finality. Your sister needs me more, he roared. And then he let go. The water snatched me like I was nothing, pulling me under with a force that stole the breath from my lungs. The world spun, a whirl of rain, wood, and screams. I surfaced once, gasping air, then was dragged under again. Daddy! I screamed one last time as the river carried me away. The final image seared into my mind was the boat pulling off with Mama and George reaching for me, while Daddy stood tall on the breaking roof, watching me disappear. His face showed no regret, only grim certainty. He had made his choice. The current tossed me like a toy. My chest burned, my limbs thrashed, my head slammed against something unseen. Each time I broke the surface, I dragged in a breath before the river swallowed me again. I'm going to die, I thought with terrifying clarity. He left me to die. A sharp crack of pain in my skull was the last thing I felt before everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in the river. I was staring at a white ceiling, the sterile scent of disinfectant in the air, the steady beeping of a machine by my side. My body felt heavy as stone. A nurse leaned over me, relief washing her tired face. "She's awake, doctor," she called, then turned back to me. "Easy, sweetheart. You're safe now. You're at Riverside Hospital." Riverside, 30 miles from Riverview. The flood had carried me that far. A man in a white coat entered, checking my eyes with a small flashlight. His badge read Dr. Matthews. "Welcome back, young lady," he said. "You gave us quite a scare. You've been unconscious for 3 days." 3 days? I croaked, my throat dry as dust. "My family." The doctor and nurse traded a look that made my blood run cold. "We'll talk about that later," he said gently. "Right now, rest is what you need most." But rest was impossible. My mind was a storm of half-formed memories. The roof collapsing, the boat pulling away, my father's hand releasing mine. "Your sister needs me more." I shook my head weakly. No. Dr. Matthews pulled up a chair. "Olivia, fishermen found you clinging to a tree downstream. Severe hypothermia. A head injury. You had no identification." "My name is Olivia," I rasped. "Olivia Wright, from Riverview." The nurse's eyes softened with pity. "Sweetheart, the flood was devastating. Many didn't make it." "My mother," I whispered. "Dorothy Wright. My brother George. My sister Linda. My father Arnold." "We'll check the survivors list," Dr. Matthews promised. "But first, you need strength." The days blurred into one another. Fever, nightmares, waking up screaming with the taste of river water still in my throat. And always my father's face as he chose to let me go. A week later, Dr. Matthews sat by my bed again, his expression heavy. "Olivia, we've confirmed your family's status. Your mother and George survived. Linda too. They were rescued that night." Tears of relief burned my eyes. "And my father?" The look on his face gave me the answer before his words did. "He didn't make it. The house collapsed minutes after the boat left." My emotions tangled: rage, sorrow, guilt. He had condemned me, yet in the end he was the one who didn't survive. And where are they now? My mother, George, and Linda? "They're in a shelter in Cincinnati," he said carefully. Then his voice softened. "But Olivia, they believe you died in the flood. You were declared missing, presumed drowned." The world tilted. "But I'm alive. You'll tell them, won't you?" He hesitated. "Of course. But there's something you should understand first. When you came in, you were raving with fever, talking about your father letting you go on purpose. About him choosing Linda over you. Shame and fury boiled in me. And you don't believe me." "No," he said quickly. "It's not that. But Olivia, back in Riverview, your father is being hailed as a hero. The story is that he sacrificed himself to save his family, that he died trying to save you. That's what your mother and siblings believe." I stared at him, stunned. The man who had abandoned me was now celebrated as a martyr. "They lost their husband, father, sister, daughter, all in one night," Dr. Matthews continued. "That version of events is what's holding them together. You're saying I should let them keep believing a lie? That I should stay dead?" He sighed. "I'm not telling you what to do. I just want you to see the whole picture before you decide." That night I couldn't close my eyes. I thought of Mama, grieving 2 losses she didn't really have. Of George, who had tried to pull me to safety. Of Linda, too fragile, never knowing what her father had truly done. and of Daddy, now remembered as a noble man, not the one who chose to sacrifice me. The next morning, a social worker visited. Her name was Celia, a woman with kind eyes and a folder thick with papers. Dr. Matthews explained your situation, she said softly. I'm here to help with your next steps. I want to see my family, I said immediately. I understand, but first you need to know everything. She laid out newspaper clippings. One headline read, "Flood hero sacrifices his life to save family." There was his picture, proud and stoic. That's a lie, I whispered. It's what people believe, Celia said gently. And maybe it's true. Trauma can distort memories, Olivia. You're saying I imagined it? That he didn't let me go? She didn't answer directly. I'm saying the truth can be complicated. Right now, your family's clinging to the story that keeps them alive. She showed me another clipping. A photo of Mama, George, and Linda at the shelter, their faces hollowed by grief. Linda's health is worsening, Celia added. She's been having breakdowns since the flood. Your sudden return with a different story might shatter her completely. Hot tears blurred my vision. So I should pretend I'm dead, for the sake of the man who left me to die? No, she said quickly. But maybe wait. Reintegrate slowly, carefully, without diving into that night's details until your family is stronger. I was torn in half. One part of me longed to rush to them, to feel Mama's arms around me, to tell George the first lived, to see Linda breathing. But another part asked if I could even look at them without bitterness, knowing Daddy had chosen her over me. And then came a thought I didn't dare voice. What if they already knew? What if Mama and George had seen it too but clung to the hero story because it was easier than facing the truth? I need time, I whispered. Celia nodded. There's one more option, she said softly. A couple here in Riverside lost their only daughter in the flood. She was your age. When they heard about you, an unidentified teenager pulled from the river, they came here hoping for a miracle. They don't think you're their daughter anymore. But they've offered to take you in temporarily, until you're ready to decide. They could give you a safe home, medical care, school. A fresh start. Away from Riverview. Away from my father's shadow. Away from the gnawing question of whether I was wanted. Can I meet them? I asked at last. The next day, I met Eleanor and Sylvester Ross. A kind, middle-aged couple whose grief mirrored my own. Eleanor was a teacher. Sylvester ran the town pharmacy. Their eyes still carried the raw ache of loss, but behind it I could see something else, gentleness, the kind that wasn't forced. We're not trying to replace your family, Olivia, Eleanor said softly, taking my hands in hers. We just want to give you a safe place. For as long as you need. For as long as you want. I studied these two strangers who were offering me shelter without prying, without demanding explanations, simply opening their home. My throat tightened as I whispered, I'll stay, but on one condition. Sylvester leaned in. What's that? I don't want to use my real name. Not yet. The couple exchanged a glance, then nodded. So what would you like to be called? Eleanor asked. I paused, searching for a name untainted by my past. One with no ties to the girl my father abandoned on the roof. Helen, I said at last. Helen Smith. It was the name of a character from a book I'd once loved. And just like that, Helen Smith was born. A new identity built on a borrowed story. From day one, the Rosses treated me like their own daughter. They enrolled me in school, got me into doctor's care, and never scolded when I woke up screaming at night. But the truth was I wasn't fine. My memory was shattered, fragments scattered like broken glass. Some days I'd catch flashes. Mama bent over embroidery, George teaching me to bait a hook, Linda's laugh echoing through the house. And always the last thing I heard, my father's voice saying, your sister needs me more. I developed an unshakable fear of water. Baths terrified me. Even quick showers left me tense and shaking. Lakes, rivers, swimming pools, all of them made my chest seize. Heavy rain alone could send me into a panic. Eleanor, with her background in psychology, sat with me on endless sleepless nights, guiding me through breathing exercises. Sylvester brewed calming teas, distracting me with lessons about medicinal plants. Together they tried to stitch back the pieces of me. Months rolled by. One morning, Eleanor slid a newspaper across the breakfast table. I think you should see this, she said gently. It was just a short note in the local section. Family of flood victim returns to Riverview. There was a photo. My mother, thinner and more worn than I remembered, standing with George and Linda in front of a small house I didn't recognize. They're rebuilding, Sylvester said softly. Just like you are. Something inside me twisted. Relief, pain, and guilt tangled together. They had moved forward, holding on to the memory of Arnold Wright the hero, while I lived under another name. When will you tell them? Eleanor asked carefully. I don't know if I ever will, I admitted. She squeezed my hand. Whatever you decide, we'll stand by you. So my double life continued. To the world, I was Helen Smith, the girl who lived with the Rosses, studied hard, and helped out at the pharmacy after class. Inside, I remained Olivia Wright, the girl her father had chosen not to save. Years slipped by. I graduated high school, enrolled in college in Cincinnati, and chose psychology, inspired by Eleanor's gentle strength. There I met Thomas, a patient, kind-eyed engineering student. Our bond grew slowly, built on long talks and quiet understanding. When he asked me to be his girlfriend, I hesitated. There are things you don't know about me, I whispered. Things that could change everything. Nothing could change the way I feel, he said firmly. But in my heart I wasn't sure. What would he think if he knew my name wasn't real, that I'd let my family mourn me all these years? Then, in my second year of college, the past came crashing back. A classmate walked in waving a newspaper. Look at this, they're making a documentary on the flood of '67. They're interviewing survivors. My stomach flipped as I read the article. And there it was, buried in a short paragraph. Among the interviewees is the Wright family, who lost their father Arnold and middle daughter Olivia in the tragedy. Arnold Wright became a local symbol of heroism, giving his life to save his wife and 2 children. The blood drained from my face. My father wasn't just remembered as a hero. He was a legend now, a fixed part of Riverview's history. You okay? My classmate asked, noticing my pale face. Just remembered something, I muttered, handing the paper back. That night I couldn't sleep. My thoughts spun like the churning river that had nearly drowned me. If I came forward now, almost a decade later, what would happen? Would Mama forgive me for letting her believe I was gone? Could Linda bear the truth that Daddy chose her over me? Would George ever look at me the same? And another question haunted me more. After living so long as Helen, how much of Olivia was even left? The next morning I made my choice. I had to see them again, even if only from the shadows. I took a bus back to Riverview. The town had rebuilt. New homes, paved streets, life carrying on as if the river had never swallowed it whole. I asked around discreetly until I found their house, a modest yellow home with a small garden. From across the street, hidden under a tree, I watched. Mama stepped out first. Older now, her dark hair streaked with gray, but still with that familiar tilt in her walk. She watered the flowers, chatted with a neighbor, and went back inside. Later, George came out, broad-shouldered, more mature, but still the brother I remembered. He left quickly, probably for work. I stayed hidden, heart racing. Hours later, the door opened again. Linda. She was grown now, but the sight of her stopped me cold. Shoulders slumped, eyes empty, her movements slow, as if weighed down by invisible chains. A man walked beside her, hand gripping her arm with too much authority. I followed from a distance, unnoticed. They entered a pharmacy. I overheard him at the counter. The same prescription. The doctor says she can't miss a dose. When they returned home, I crept close to a side window as night fell. Inside, voices rose. She needs those meds, Mom, George snapped. You know how bad it gets without them. I know, Mama said wearily. But they're expensive, and Theodore forgets to give them on time. That man's worthless, George growled. He only married her for the pension. Lower your voice, Mama warned. Linda could hear you. She's too doped up to hear anything, George shot back bitterly. I stumbled away, sick to my stomach. My little sister, the one Daddy chose to save, was broken. Trapped in a marriage of convenience and a haze of medication. The next day, I dug through old newspapers at a stand. One special edition on the flood's 5th anniversary praised Arnold Wright as a selfless hero. According to the article, I had died while trying to rescue a neighbor. My sacrifice was lauded as noble, while Daddy was immortalized for holding the roof steady so the family could escape. Reading about my own death was surreal, like standing at my own grave. But the worst part came near the end. The youngest daughter, Linda, has never recovered emotionally. She suffers severe depression, weighed down by guilt. She believes that being the first to be rescued caused the loss of her father and sister. Guilt. The burden should have belonged to him, but Linda carried it instead. In that moment, I understood the stakes. If I revealed the truth now, it wouldn't just tarnish my father's memory, could shatter Linda completely. I stayed in Riverview 2 more days, watching them, piecing together scraps of their lives. Mama, aged and overworked. George, bitter under the weight of responsibility. Linda, lost in shadows. This was the family my father had chosen to save. This was the result of his decision. On my last morning in town, I made a vow. I would not reveal myself, not yet. Not out of loyalty to my father, but to protect what remained of the people I loved. I returned to Cincinnati with my secret, but also with resolve. If I couldn't tell the truth, I could at least help them from afar. I sent money anonymously, just enough to lighten Mama's load. I studied Linda's condition, searched treatments, and collected evidence. Clippings, testimonies, medical files. One day, maybe when the time was right, I'd have the proof. Your sister needs me more. Daddy's words haunted me still. He had condemned me that night, and in a way, his choice condemned all of us. Years passed. I lived as Helen Smith, finished my degree, started working in a trauma clinic, and built a life with Thomas by my side. On the surface, I was whole. Inside, I was still Olivia Wright, the girl who had survived the river and carried a truth no one else knew. My college graduation should have been a day of joy. Eleanor and Sylvester cheered in the audience, Thomas waiting with flowers. I smiled for pictures, but inside I wondered how it might feel if Mama, George, and Linda were there. Then, in 1978, 11 years after the flood, I read something that made my blood run hot. A small article. Riverview to erect a statue honoring flood hero Arnold Wright. A statue, bronze and stone, to celebrate a man who had let his daughter drown. Something inside me snapped awake. I showed the paper to Thomas. He already knew parts of the truth, that I wasn't really Helen, that my family thought I was dead. But not all of it. He didn't know about that moment on the roof. "What will you do?" he asked gently, holding my hand. "I don't know," I whispered. "But I can't let this stand. I can't let them carve his lie into stone." That night, I dreamed of his face cast in bronze, water swirling at my feet, Linda laying flowers at the monument of the man who had chosen between his daughters. In the quiet hours before dawn, I sat at my desk and started writing a letter. Not to my family, but to the mayor of Riverview. It was a letter that never left my hands, where I spilled out a decade's worth of truth, anger, and grief. When the sun came up, my floor was covered in pages, some smudged with tears. Thomas found me sitting there, drained. He didn't lecture me, didn't try to fix it. He just said, "You need to go back. Not to expose anyone, not to fight, just to see it for yourself. Then you'll know what you want to do." He was right. I needed to return, not as a shadow hiding in the background this time, but to walk the streets of the place where it all began. Only then could I decide how it would end. A week later, I asked for leave from work and headed home to Riverview. The town had changed since the last time I slipped through unnoticed. Fresh buildings, paved roads, prosperity where once there had been mud and loss. But the Ohio River hadn't changed. It still flowed, calm on the surface, dangerous underneath. Just like my memories. I stayed at a simple boarding house and spent my first days wandering, letting the sounds and smells of Riverview settle back into me like old ghosts. On the third day, I gathered my courage and walked to the cemetery. It didn't take long to find it. A tall, carefully tended headstone. Arnold Wright. And below it, Olivia Wright. Father and daughter, gone together in the flood. I stood staring at my own name carved in stone, feeling emotions twist so hard in my chest I could hardly breathe. Rage. Sorrow. Disbelief. A strange hollowness, too, as if the real Olivia had died that night. And only this borrowed version, Helen, remained. Did you know them? The voice behind me froze me in place. Slowly I turned. A middle-aged man with gray streaks in his hair. His face familiar in a way that tugged at old memories. I was just looking. I said weakly. He gave a sad smile. Arnold was my friend. We worked together at the mill. A tragedy, what happened to him and his girl. And then I knew. Mr. Benjamin, older now, but still the same man who had once warned my father about the river. Were you there? That night? I asked, my voice trembling. He nodded, eyes far away. Not on their roof, but close. I saw the boat come. I heard the screams. And he hesitated. I saw when the girl was swept away. Arnold tried to hold on, but the current was too much. My pulse quickened. Here was someone who might confirm what I remembered. Are you sure? Did you see it clearly? He narrowed his eyes. Why the interest? You're not from around here. Just historical research, I blurted. Studying disasters. He seemed to accept that. Well, all I know is what I saw. He tried, but he couldn't save her. He was a good man. Loved that family more than anything. Every word cut into me like glass. Either my memory had betrayed me, or Mr. Benjamin hadn't really seen, or maybe he had chosen to believe the lie. And his family? I asked quietly. He sighed. Dorothy was never the same. The boy grew up bitter. And little Linda? He shook his head, touching his temple. She never recovered. Folks say she blames herself, says if she hadn't gone first, maybe her daddy and sister would have survived. Tried to end her own life more than once. The world tilted beneath me. My baby sister broken, tormented by guilt that wasn't hers. Guilt that belonged to our father. Maybe even to me for staying silent all these years. I thanked him quickly before the tears gave me away. Back in the boarding house, I lay awake all night, turning his words over and over. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I had to see Linda with my own eyes. I learned she attended a small church on Wednesdays. That's where I went, sitting quietly in the back pew until she came in with her husband, Theodore. At first, I almost didn't recognize her. She was so thin, so worn, every movement heavy with sorrow. Theodore left her at the door, promising to return in an hour. I slid onto her pew, keeping a gentle distance. It's a beautiful place to pray, I said softly. She blinked at me, startled by a stranger's kindness. Her eyes, brown like Mama's, were dulled hollow. Yes, she whispered. I come here every Wednesday. I like churches too, I continued. They feel safe somehow. She nodded faintly, gaze drifting back to the altar. After a while, she asked, You're not from here, are you? No, I said. I'm passing through. I'm a psychologist. I work with people who've lived through trauma. I wasn't sure why I admitted that. Maybe I wanted her to trust me. Maybe I just needed her to open up. She repeated the word like it was new to her. Trauma. Like losses? Yes, that and more. Silence stretched. Then, still staring at the altar, she murmured, I lost my father and sister in a flood. Long ago. My heart clenched. I'm so sorry. Everyone says that. Her voice hardened, bitter. But no one understands. What don't they understand? I asked gently. She turned then, eyes burning with something fierce and fragile. That it was my fault. They died because of me. Why would you think that? I asked, though I already knew. Because I was the first one rescued. The boat came and my father sent me. He could have sent Mama or George or my sister Olivia. But he chose me. And then the roof collapsed. The water took my sister. My father died trying to save her. If he hadn't sent me first, maybe they'd both still be alive. Tears streamed down her face. Each word shredded me. She didn't know, the truth was the opposite. Daddy hadn't died saving me. He'd let me go. He'd chosen her. And now she carried the weight of his choice. Linda, I whispered before I could stop myself. She didn't notice the slip. Lost in her grief, she said, Everyone tells me it wasn't my fault. Mama, George, the pastor. But they don't know what it's like to be the weak one, the sick one, the one everyone had to protect. My father loved me more than anyone. Always said I needed special care. And because of that love, he died. My sister died. And in that moment I understood. His words that night, your sister needs me more, weren't just desperation. They were the truth of his whole life. His obsession with Linda had built to that moment. How is your life now? I asked softly. She gave a small empty shrug. I live with medicine, with nightmares, with Theodore. Who only married me out of pity, or maybe for Daddy's pension. She gave a hollow laugh. Mama thinks I don't know, but I do. He doesn't even try to hide it. Does he treat you well? I asked carefully. She hesitated. That pause told me everything. He doesn't hit me if that's what you mean. But he controls me. My pills. Where I go. Who I talk to. Says it's for my own good. That I can't trust myself. The same cycle. The same control. First my father, now Theodore. And do you believe him? I asked. For the first time she looked straight into my eyes. Sometimes. Other times. I wonder if it's all a lie. Maybe my father wasn't the hero everyone says. Maybe. She stopped, frightened by her own thoughts. Maybe. I urged softly. She shook her head, retreating. Just crazy ideas. The doctor says questioning reality is part of my illness. At that moment I almost broke. Almost grabbed her hand and said, "It's me, Olivia. I'm alive. And none of it was your fault." But before I could, the church door creaked open. Theodore walked in, voice sharp. "Linda. Time to go." She rose instantly, obedient, her voice shrinking back into submission. "It was good talking with you." "Likewise," I whispered, watching as he led her away like a prisoner. I stayed in that pew long after they left, shaking. Linda wasn't just fragile. She was trapped in lies and guilt, in a marriage that looked like care but was just another form of control. And my silence had helped keep her there. That evening I walked to the Ohio River, the same river that had almost claimed me. Its surface glimmered peacefully now, but I knew its danger. And standing there I made my decision. I couldn't just walk up and announce myself as Olivia. That would destroy them. But I couldn't keep living as Helen either. I needed a plan. Slow, careful, steady. A way to reveal the truth when the time was right. And more than that, I needed to save Linda. Back in Cincinnati I told Thomas, "I'm going to reveal who I am. But I have to do it the right way." He held me close. No questions. Just quiet understanding. In the months that followed, I built my plan piece by piece. I rented an office in Riverview under the name Dr. Helen Smith, psychologist. Slowly I earned trust, saw patients, became known for helping people with trauma. And all the while I kept an eye on Linda. I learned her marriage was crumbling. That Theodore's doctor friend prescribed drugs that kept her numb. That Mama and George suspected abuse but couldn't stop it. Then, one rainy afternoon in April 1979, the storm broke. The door to my office burst open. George stood there, soaked, carrying Linda limp in his arms. "Please," he gasped. "I need help. She overdosed. I can't take her to the hospital. Her husband works there. Please." My breath caught. My brother, who didn't know who I was, standing in front of me begging for help. "Lay her on the couch," I said, forcing my voice steady. Her skin was pale but her pulse was there. Weak but alive. George handed me a crumpled note, his hands shaking. "I can't take it anymore. I want to be with Dad and Olivia. Forgive me." The world stopped. Linda had tried to die to be with me. With me, alive and standing there pretending to be someone else. I swallowed the sob rising in my throat. "She needs to be somewhere safe," I told George firmly. "Somewhere Theodore can't reach her." "Where?" His voice cracked. "I have a house in Riverside," I said, "the Ross's home, where love and safety had once sheltered me. She can stay there. And you're coming with me." George hesitated, then nodded. Together we carried Linda to my car. As he settled her gently in the back seat, I called Thomas, my voice breaking as I explained. He promised to meet us in Riverside. The drive was tense. Rain battered the windshield. The river swelled at the edges of town. Linda stirred once or twice, eyes fluttering, then sank back into unconsciousness. And with every mile I knew, the moment I had been running from my whole life was finally here. George sat in the back seat with Linda's head in his lap, his face lined like a man who had carried too much for too long. I tried to keep my voice steady as I asked, "How did you even know where to find me?" "Mom heard about you," he said quietly. "Said you'd helped one of her neighbors. I was going to bring Linda to you anyway. We've tried for years to get her out from under Theodore's control, but she never accepts help. She thinks she deserves the life she's living like it's punishment." "Punishment for what?" I asked, though I already knew. For Dad's death. And for my sister's, he said, his voice breaking. It's a tragedy that never ends. We reached the Ross's home at dusk. Eleanor and Sylvester didn't ask a single question when we showed up with an unconscious woman and a desperate man. After so many years with me, they'd learned that life sometimes arrived with no explanations. Eleanor, once a nurse before she became a teacher, helped me monitor Linda through the night. Thomas arrived later with a doctor friend, who confirmed she would recover. By morning, Linda's eyes fluttered open. She was dazed, disoriented, but awake. When she saw George leaning over her, she burst into tears. "Why didn't you let me go, George?" she sobbed. "Why didn't you let me go be with them?" He pulled her close, crying with her. "Because I love you too much to lose you," he said simply. I left them there and walked into the kitchen, where Eleanor was pouring strong coffee. Thomas and Sylvester whispered on the porch. Eleanor looked at me, her gaze sharp but kind. "It's time, isn't it?" she asked. I swallowed hard and nodded. "Time to tell the truth," she said. "It won't be easy, but you're ready, and they need to hear it." That afternoon, when Linda had steadied some, I asked her and George to sit with me. Thomas stayed by my side, his presence a quiet anchor. "I have something important to tell you," I began, my voice shaking despite all the rehearsals I'd played in my head. "Something that's hard to believe, but it's the truth." They exchanged puzzled looks. "My name isn't Helen Smith," I said. "That's the name I took almost 12 years ago after the flood." George frowned, trying to piece it together. "But Linda..." Something flickered in her eyes. "Recognition? Hope?" I drew a deep breath. "My real name is Olivia Wright." The silence stretched heavy. George went pale, frozen. Linda's hands flew to her mouth. "That's impossible," George finally whispered. "My sister died that night. I saw her pulled away by the water." "Yes," I said softly. "You saw. But I survived. Fishermen found me miles downstream, barely alive. I was in a coma for days. When I woke, everyone believed I was gone. Dad had already been named a hero, and I thought telling the truth would only cause more pain." "What truth?" Linda asked, her voice barely audible. I looked at her. The same eyes as mine, but dulled by years of sorrow. The truth about what really happened that night. About why Dad let me go. George's jaw tightened. "What are you talking about?" I forced the words out. I'll never forget what he said before he released me. He looked at me and said, "Your sister needs me more." And then he let me go. George shot to his feet, rage twisting his face. "No, that's insane. He would never. Dad was a hero. He died trying to save you." "No, George," Linda said suddenly, her voice calm in a way that startled us both. "She's telling the truth." He stared at her, stunned. "How can you possibly believe that?" Linda's gaze locked on mine. "Because I always knew something wasn't right. I always felt the story was wrong. And sometimes in my dreams," her voice faltered. "Sometimes I hear those words too. Your sister needs me more." I thought it was just my broken mind inventing things. But it wasn't, was it? Tears blurred my vision. "No, Linda. It wasn't your imagination. It was the truth trying to break through." George collapsed back into his chair, the anger fading into confusion. "So, Dad chose you to die. He sacrificed you for her?" "Yes," I whispered. "Because he'd spent his whole life protecting her. He couldn't let go of that obsession. When the moment came, he didn't hesitate." The room fell silent, each of us drowning in the weight of it. Finally, Linda stood, trembling, and came to me. She studied my face as if searching for the girl she once knew. "You're really alive?" she whispered, her hand brushing my cheek. "All these years, you were alive?" "Yes," I said, gripping her hand. "And every single day, I wished I could tell you it wasn't your fault. That it never was." She broke then, throwing her arms around me in a desperate, crushing hug. George joined us, pulling us both into his strong arms. For a moment, we were just children again, clinging to each other while the storm raged outside. "We have to tell Mom," George said when we finally pulled apart. "We will," I promised. "But carefully. There's one more thing we have to deal with first." "Theodore," Linda spat, her voice sharp. "Yes," I said. "We can't let him keep controlling you." He'll claim you're delusional, increase your meds, lock you away. Not if he can't find her, George said, his voice steady with new resolve. Not if she disappears. And where would I go? Linda asked, wary. To Cincinnati, I told her. With me and Thomas. At least until we're ready to face Theodore, Mom, and the whole town. She hesitated. Then a spark lit her tired eyes. Yes. I want that. I want to start over. That night something shifted forever. The walls of lies cracked wide open. The truth had finally risen from the depths where it had been buried for so long. And though the path ahead was uncertain, maybe even dangerous, for the first time in over a decade I felt like I could breathe again. What followed wasn't quick or easy. With Linda safe in Cincinnati, the next step was telling Mom. George took the lead, asking her to visit without telling her why. When she walked into my apartment and saw me, she dropped to her knees. My daughter, she sobbed. My Olivia. She clung to me like she'd never let go. Hours of tears and explanations poured out. In time she admitted she had seen what Dad did that night. But fear, trauma, and pressure from others had forced her to accept the hero version of events. Together, the four of us built a plan. First, we had to free Linda from Theodore's grip. With my training and the help of doctors I trusted, we documented the drugging, the manipulation, the abuse. Neighbors testified. Even the pharmacy confirmed his involvement. We got a court order for protection. When Theodore came home to find divorce papers and investigators waiting, his power crumbled overnight. The harder battle was with the town itself. How do you undo a legend? We decided not to tear down Dad's memory directly. That would only wound more people. Instead, we told a different story. My story. George, now a respected journalist, published the truth. The daughter everyone thought lost had survived. With documents, witnesses, and evidence, Riverview had no choice but to face reality. The statue for Dad was never built. Instead, the memorial honored all victims equally, with no false heroes. In 1980, I reclaimed my legal name, Olivia Wright. But I kept Helen as my middle name, a tribute to the Rosses who had given me a second life. Linda, finally free of drugs and guilt, blossomed. She studied nursing, became a mental health specialist, married a kind man named August, and built a family of her own. George stayed in Riverview, running the local paper with purpose and honesty. Mom, freed of silence, found joy again in her sewing until she passed at 92. Thomas and I eventually moved to Pine Ridge in 1990, building a home on a hill where the river could never reach us. That house became our refuge, full of laughter, sunlight, and open doors for family. Now at 73, I spend my days sewing cloth dolls for my grandchildren. Every stitch carries part of my story. Fabric from Thomas's old shirts, Linda taught me to dye. Embroidery my mother once showed me. Each red heart I sew feels like piecing myself back together. My family is my treasure. Timothy, our son, lives in Minneapolis with his wife and 2 daughters. Linda thrives in Denver with August and their 3 kids. George runs the Riverview paper, honoring truth. The Rosses, my second parents, are gone now. But their love still lives in me. I still tremble when storms roll in, but I no longer drown in the memories. Twice a year, the whole family gathers here. Christmas and Linda's birthday. For generations fill the house with noise, joy, and proof that the truth can heal what lies never could. When I watch Linda laughing freely with her grandchildren, I know every painful step was worth it. And so, my friends, if you've stayed with me this far, remember this. No flood, no lie, no betrayal can erase who we truly are. Even when the people who should protect us let us go, we can rise to the surface again. At 27, I trembled when I finally faced my past. But courage met me there. My wrinkles are maps of survival. Each one tells a story of choosing life over silence. If you're living under the weight of lies, know this. Truth hurts, yes, but it also heals. Reach out. Don't fight the current alone. There are always hands willing to pull you up. And if this story touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Somewhere, someone is drowning quietly, and these words might be their lifeline. Because life is like the river, it doesn't wait. And no matter how high the water rises, there is always a way to the surface. I found mine. You can find yours too. My dear friends, if you've listened all the way to the end, I want you to know how much that means to me. This isn't just my story. It's a reminder that even when life tries to drown us, we can still find our way back to the surface. If these words touched you, please share them. You never know who might be sitting in silence, waiting for a sign that it's possible to survive. Maybe this story could be that sign for someone you love, or even for you. And if you'd like to walk with me on this journey, go ahead and subscribe. Leave a little word in the comments, truth. That way I'll know you stayed with me all the way. Every comment feels like a hug, and Lord knows we all need more of those. Don't wait for tomorrow. Life moves fast like the river that shaped mine. But no matter how strong the current, there's always a path back to hope. I found mine, and I believe with all my heart, you can find yours too.